This is Your Superior Self, episode 72, Holistic Health and Happiness with Dr. Steve Young.
Everything is intertwined. So to me, holistic means looking at a human from all different perspectives. What we do is we look at from energetic, vibrational. We look at it from your mind. Like, what are the stories that you have, right, that then dictates your perception and your reality. We'll look at your mechanical self, right? And there's studies showing, for example, this popular TED Talk, just by doing this and getting your chest up, your testosterone just increased 12%, right? So our mechanical self affects our chemical self.
The Buddha said to keep the body in good health is a duty. Otherwise, we shall not be able to keep our mind strong and clear. What is up, Superior Nation? What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my favorite podcast, Your Superior Self. I'm your host, Trey Downs, and I want to say thank you for downloading. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with me today. I got a great guest, Dr. Steve Young, who is a holistic health coach and holistic practitioner and fitness trainer. We have a great conversation about holistic medicine and living a holistic lifestyle. I want to say, if this is your first time listening to the episode, please leave a rating and a review and hit subscribe. It helps get the word out about the podcast. It helps me scale and get this into the iPhones and the earbuds and the Apple Plays and Google Plays of everyone who's on that journey of self-betterment and self-mastery. It's how we help each other, right? It is how we help each other. Word of mouth is more effective than any marketing campaign. I can't stress that enough. And going back to Buddha's quote about the body and the mind, I totally agree with it. I love that quote because I struggle with brain fog. And for those who don't know what that is, it's when you have trouble remembering things. You can't clear your mind. It's hard for you to put your thoughts into words. And I used to think that it was solved by a big cup of caffeine or some coffee or whatever. And it's not. When I started learning about living a holistic lifestyle, I learned that everything is connected, mind, body, and spirit. So if one is off center, then the rest of yourself will be unbalanced. And I started implementing daily routines into my life, like working out, reading, fasting, meditating, and a ton of other things. And I started seeing results. I started seeing a clearer mind. I started seeing a seamless transition in my interview approaches and in the seamless flow of my thoughts into words. And it's fascinating to me. And Dr. Steve Young and I talk a little bit about brain fog along with a ton of other great subjects. And I'm excited about this conversation, and I don't want to waste any more time leading up to it. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Dr. Steve Young. So today I am joined by Dr. Steve Young with Body Solutions. Dr. Young, thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight.
No, it's like I said, it's awesome to be here to kind of converse with other passionate people.
So before we dive into the health questions that I have, why don't you go ahead and give us like a quick update and tell us about what you're up to today?
Yeah, so I'm super excited. I call it sort of following the sort of magical breadcrumb, just through a series of yeses and things that have come along our way. I have some partners and working on essentially creating an AI. Right, our goal is to sort of dump a bunch of super brain knowledge into AI, fill it with a bunch of research, a bunch of information about health, and basically in the future, in the next 3 to 5 years, the goal is to give people, the masses, access to information that can help restore the root causes of their illness, the imbalances that brew illness and disease. So that's like the holy grail, big goal of all the companies that I'm working on right now. That's the big one.
Tell us about how it came to be. How did your story start for you? How did you evolve into this this powerful image in the medical field? You have this awesome website. I'm looking at it right now. You're in great shape. You have this great presence. But was it always like that for you? The confidence, like you ooze confidence. Was that always the way it was for you?
But when I was born, the nurses were like, "Oh my God, check out the abs." And that's really when it started. No, I wish. So no, I think we hear a lot about like the hero's journey, right? And so everyone that I've ever met that has accomplished something worthwhile and significant, when you really, deeply connect with them, there comes a story. And so for me, yeah, it's the typical. When I was young, we grew up dirt poor. I came from Taiwan when I was 8. We literally picked from the trash for all of our furniture. My mom worked, 80 hours a week just, support my brother and I. And like literally when we first came to America, we lived in a room in a trailer park with no bathroom, no kitchen, like just a bed. And so I was pretty unsupervised as a kid because my mom was working so much. And so eventually we actually saved enough money to, actually have a TV. And so I would watch TV all day. I would play video games, and I would basically live on like Oreo cookies all day. That was like my entire days of nutrition. And so you can imagine if you sit all day, don't move, and eat Oreo cookies, those of you that are not into health, I'll tell you that does not produce a healthy mind and body. And yeah, and so I was like sick all the time, had horrible allergies, just constantly tired. And at some point you just like get sick of being sick. And for me, that was like early teen years, mainly because at that point you're now like, oh my God, there are chicks. Like you might want to be, attractive to the opposite sex. And so, started reading all about health when I was 14. I was, mentally in a dark place when I was young. So when I was 14, I started reading Psycho-Cybernetics, right? So that was really just the beginning. It was like 29 years ago. And just, years of practice, just learning about mindset and health has led to this.
So talk about that. I mean, the being alone by yourself quite a bit when you're a kid, like, being a doctor takes a lot of education, a long time to achieve that status and those credentials. What were you like in school back then?
Yeah. When I was young, really interesting. Yeah, I think about this a lot. So when I first came to America, I lived in West Grove, Pennsylvania. It's like outside of Kennett Square. It's like the mushroom capital of the world. And so kids were nice. I was fully accepted. Like, oh my God, here's this cool kid. But of course, when I came to South New Jersey here, where I still live, for sure there was like massive bullying. It was such a night and day. I remember I was like, oh my God, I was like the favorite loved kid, and I went from that to like the most bullied kid in school. And so there was probably because of such a drastic change that was a little rough on my psychology when I was young. For sure, you're feeling lonely, not understood, like what the hell just happened. But it was exactly the experience I needed that sort of changed my trajectory of my life. Like you start to look at, well, how is that person, whether it be that kid or actually back then, I don't know, I picked Bill Gates and Martin Luther King. I was like, how could Bill Gates and Martin Luther King be who they are? Like they didn't have a third head or a fourth arm. They just thought differently. And so I started just to read about, well, how does a human think in order to be that person? So yeah.
So you said your mom worked a lot. Was she a single mom?
Yep, single mom.
Really? Where
Yeah.
was your dad at? Was
So
he in
my
the picture at
dad,
all?
yeah, my dad still lives in Taiwan actually. And so interestingly, when it was not a happy divorce. And so when I was young, the whole time, my mom was like, never talk to your dad. He's a dick. And one of the powers of Facebook, actually 2 years ago, through Facebook, actually Facebook video, I reconnected with my dad, like for the first time.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
how was that?
it was so uh, the first emotion that comes to mind was it was slightly frustrating, not from oh my God, I haven't talked to him in such a long time. I feel like I'm at a stage in my life where my English verbal skills of communicating exactly how he feels there, but my Mandarin skills, so he speaks Mandarin, so do I, is that of an 8-year-old, right? Because I haven't, like progressed my Mandarin knowledge since then. And so, yeah, I felt like I lacked the language to fully express what I wanted to
So
explore.
there was still a language barrier there.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, there was a language barrier basically. So
Have you talked to him since the Facebook stream?
here and there on Facebook. I mean, one of my goals is to either later this year or beginning next year, bring my daughters and swing by. Cause I'm going to go to China anyway for business. I'll swing by Taiwan and like deeply connect. And hopefully there's like a translator there uh,
Sure.
to make it worthwhile. So
That's amazing. That's pretty insane. You know what? Actually, in today's age, like a lot of people are starting to reconnect with people that have been either missing in their life or just got disconnected with. I know we've done a couple of things in our family with ancestry.com, and
oh,
we're finding new relations everywhere and people that we didn't know were related to. It's a pretty powerful time, especially with the technology that's going on. I feel like being connected is a whole lot easier. And with your language barrier, I mean, you can even get like an app on your iPhone, really, and help translate that, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
that's pretty amazing.
yeah.
So, going back to your childhood, you had it rough, and you talk about eating a whole box of Oreos. Like,
Yep.
is that legit? Like a whole box or a whole
Yeah,
bag
go back. Yeah, like no,
every day?
not every day, but definitely there are certain days I have distinct memories of like I would play video games for like 20 hours straight. Because back then, to give listeners some frame of reality. So I'll be 44 this year. So this is a long time ago. Like back then, you couldn't pause video games. You couldn't like sleep and then come back, right? And so once you started your Super Mario Brothers and you wanted to finish, you keep going, or Zelda, and I would play for like 20 hours straight. And of course, you don't really want to get up and go cook food and stuff. And so you just sit down with a bag of Oreos and you eat the Oreo cookies and you play video games. So, oh yeah,
So yeah, that's Zelda. I remember that game, and then you're exactly right. I mean, you're going to sit there and eat junk the entire time while you're playing if your parents aren't around.
yeah.
So I'm assuming that you said you got sick quite a bit. You had headaches, probably not in the best shape. Was it girls that got you into that, or was it the self image? What really got you into really focusing in on the health part of that?
Yeah, yeah. For sure. I mean, the joke answer is girls, but for sure. I mean, it wasn't all girls. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it really was. I don't know. Something. One day I was pretty depressed, right? And I was like, not much at that moment in my life was working how I wanted it to be. And really, it was just a matter of like the pain. I reflected back, like the pain, like not too many friends because I was being bullied. I was definitely like sick all the time, tired. Like my life really consisted of just like video games and TV most of the time. I didn't really see my mom because she was working, and so in all areas of life, it wasn't what I would consider fulfilling and what I wanted, right? And I was like, something's got to change. Like this is like a pretty tough breaking point, and really from all of that, came this high motivation to turn things around.
But that's pretty intense for a 14-year-old to be conscious to that, right? Like I feel like most 14-year-olds would just continue down that path, not really realizing that it's not really positive what they're doing, and mentally they're not gaining any educational whatever. But to be 14 and kind of reflect on yourself and where you're at in your life and be like, this is not something that I want to continue doing. That's pretty good, man. I mean, at 14, I don't think I was mature enough to realize, hey, man, I got to cut back on the Oreos and do a couple push-ups because it's just not your mindset at 14. That's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any relative frame of reference in terms of timing, and I'm just thinking back like why 14. I guess I have memories like and my mom would tell me like when I was young, I like just sat by myself and thought a lot. And so maybe there was something innate, in my childhood nature, maybe. But yeah, at the time, I didn't see it as any frame of reference in terms of this is early or late or whatever. I just like
Sure.
this sucks and I want this to change.
But still, to be a young teenager and be able to be conscious to that and like an inward reflection and really take a look at oneself and kind of critique it. Like that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
So, what was your first like health experience? What was your first? Was it a magazine, a health magazine, or a book, or what was it?
Yeah, for sure. Right. So the first mindset book, the first action really was reading Psycho-Cybernetics, like programming your subconscious. And from a health perspective, yeah, back then it was like muscle and fitness, right? That was like the early days. Started with that, and then probably within a year of that, you start to read like those muscle and fitness magazines. You start to realize some things. One, which is they're basically just like saying the same thing, just recycling the content basically, right? And then so after a year, I was like, yeah, this is just like old information. And then I started to go to, books, and quickly evolved to like medical published research, right? Because I started to realize that when I was reading books, that it's essentially just one person's opinion, and you quickly learn that sometimes that's literally just their opinion. And so I, learned that just from school as well, that published medical research is at least less biased than books, which is definitely less biased than magazines. So I was kind of seeking like what was the best source of information back then.
So the magazines rolled itself into kind of like medical journals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you caught the health bug and wanted to get better and get fit. Like, what were some of the first exercises that you were doing as a young adult? Like, was it, did you learn the exercises from the journals and the health magazines? I mean, what did it look like? Just jumping jacks and push-ups?
Yeah. So it was definitely an evolution over the last couple decades, right? So in the beginning, it was basically bodybuilding, right? In muscle fitness back then, in the late 80s, early 90s was just basically bodybuilding, like your bench press, your shoulder press, your bicep curls, your tricep push downs, your squats, and it was just hilarious that in the beginning, like some guys would you kind of skip legs, you do lots of bench press.
I was getting ready to ask you, please tell me that you did some legs.
Yeah, and so what's hilarious is I remember the first day I went to the high school gym. It's funny, just I think back like how the universe or God or whatever your frame of reality works. So literally I walk into the gym and there's a girl on the bench. She's lying down, her knees are in the air, so she can't like use her body to cheat, and she's repping out with 135 like it's nothing. And so yeah, ridiculous. And so I get on the bench, I'm like, I can't even budge 135 at that time. I put like 95 pounds, and it goes, she was actually like our high school track star. And so, and then eventually, like a year later, from working out and I didn't do any legs, someone was like, "Oh my God, you have such chicken legs." I was like, "All right, maybe I should do some legs." And yeah, like I'm assuming that's a very typical progression of guys, like don't do legs. And yeah, and so typically it was bodybuilding. In fact, I bodybuilded after lifting for about 8 or 9 years. Someone's like, "Oh, you should try bodybuilding." So I actually did bodybuilding for about 15 years, and lifted like a bodybuilder, right, which is your typical bench press and lat pull down, blah, blah, blah exercises. And it really wasn't until I got much further in my education where I learned that way of lifting actually works against you from a health perspective. So
Really? Why is that?
Yeah. So, so if you think about it, in bodybuilding, from a very high level strategic perspective, you segment the body, right? Today's back and bis and tomorrow's chest and tris and next day's legs. However, you don't wake up today and say, today I'm only going to move my back and biceps. You can't, right? Because every muscle has to move. And so the way I explain it is if you lift just one muscle part and then another muscle part, yet when it comes game time, all the muscles have to work. That's like a football team practicing where every player practices on a separate field, but game time, they got to play together. They're not going to coordinate well, right? There's horrible timing and all that stuff. And so that's essentially from a high level strategic perspective, what's happening to your body. You're getting bigger looking muscles and you're strong with segmented movements. But in most of life movements, like picking up a trash can, every muscle part has to work together. So you become more injury prone, basically, if you lift like a bodybuilder, basically. And it's also very inefficient. A lot of people don't realize when I was reading the muscle fitness and all the magazines, they were all about doing 12 sets of chest, right? And the reason they're doing that is because they need to saturate a lot of blood to those muscles and keep it there because they were injecting high amounts of steroids into their body. So the steroids would come to the area, attach to the receptors, and make the muscles bigger. But if you're not doing steroids, that way of working out is very, very, very inefficient at changing your body, right?
So let's say I'm an average guy. What would you recommend
Sure.
be my workout? Would it be full body every day, or how would you coach me up on that?
Yeah. So without any information from you other than average guy, um, there's research on this, right? And so I'm assuming average guy would not only want to, like every guy I've ever asked has this to say. They go, I want to build muscle and lose body fat, right? So from a visual perspective, that's a goal. Now, but we now know much more than that, right? We know I could say, hey, would you like to change your genetics so you can be living longer, have more energy, and produce more energetic things in your body? Most people are like, yes, why wouldn't I want that? And so if that's the case, then there's studies looking at how do we work out to turn on the most amount of genes that are healthy for you, basically. And it is going to be full body workout. It is going to be sequenced in a way where you do maybe 3 exercises in a row nonstop, right, to get your heart rate really up, and then rest for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then repeat, right? So it's 3 exercises, 3 movements, and then rest, 3 movements and rest, 3 movements and rest. And so that's the overall planning. And then from a movement perspective, you definitely want to get movements that's more natural for humans than bodybuilders. If you think about it, in bodybuilding or general, bench press, lat, pull down, shoulder press, bicep curl, tricep extensions, they all move our bodies in straight lines. But just think, if the next time when you go to take your shirt off tonight, you'll notice your limbs don't move in straight lines. Our arms do not move in straight lines in life. They move in diagonal patterns, right? And so I'm a huge proponent of thinking that we're all athletes, right? Just because we don't play football anymore, let's say, we call people life athletes. You play get out of the car. You play pick up the grocery bag. And so we want to make sure that we're training our bodies to move how life would move us, right? It'd be silly to take a football player to say your strength and conditioning, your practice, you're going to swim every day. But yet when you play football, you're going to run and carry this thing. That would make no sense. And so when you work out, you want to move your body in diagonal movements involving multiple muscles at once. And I can send videos of this to you. And you basically do those type of movements, 3 movements back to back, rest, and then repeat.
Let's say you're a 9 to 5er and you don't have a lot of time to work out. Like, what are some quick exercises that I can do in the morning to kind of help me start my day out with a success?
Yeah. So you could literally just, I don't know, go on Amazon, type in exercise bands, buy a set. It's probably going to be $25. And it comes with a door anchor. You put it in the door, shut the door. So just imagine it's coming from the top of the door, right? The band's high. You grab the band and you are facing side, like you stand in a way, let's say the door is now to your right and the band's in your hands. You squat and you chop the band down towards your ankles and you stand back up. And you turn around and you chop the other way, right? And then you take the bands off and you put it at the bottom of the door. And now you go back to where you were standing. You pick up the bands and now you squat as you chop up, right? Because the band's coming from the floor now, and you turn around. Just those 2 movements will work every muscle in your body.
How long should I do that for? Like, what's a good time?
Yeah, so it depends on your current condition. I will say no more than 30 minutes, right? So like when I work out, I do about 20 to 25 minutes of a workout Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That's it. So my total workout time is hour, at most 75 minutes, at most, a week.
So 3 days a week,
Yeah,
75 minutes each.
uh, each week.
Each
Yeah,
week.
so 20 to 25 minutes a day for 3 days.
Okay. And that's enough to, I mean, obviously you're in good shape.
Yep.
So that's incredible. I would have thought that it would have to be more than that.
Nope.
No. Oh man. So what is your like niche area of medicine? Like what is it what are you the master at? Like what is your market?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for sure, I know a lot of amazing healers and specialists, right? I'm definitely like not the best at any one thing because I've spent a lifetime studying so many things. Yeah, I mean, I've studied biomechanics, like physically how the body works, how the mind works. I used to teach physiology, which is like chemically how the body works at, Rutgers medical program. I've looked at energy work. I've looked at so many things. And so at this point, I feel like I'm pretty good at understanding we'll just say 80% of many, many, many different ways of healing the body. And so the magic of that is each of those heals. If you go to a massage therapist and let's say you have neck pain, they're gonna be like, it's your muscles. If you go to an orthopedist, it's your joint. If you go to an energy worker, it's your energy. If you go to a mindset person, it's your thoughts. If you go to a nutritionist, they're like, oh, you're just inflamed from the food that you're eating. Everyone sees it from their cognitive bias and their field of practice and saying it's coming from that. I guess what I would say I'm good at from experience, just because I've done this for such a long time, is I can look at it from all of those and say, well, it's really 30% from your muscles, 10% from your joint, probably 50% from your mind, and the next 20% from the food and the inflammation that you're eating. Right? So being able to put together the puzzle to see it truly holistically versus being biased and saying this is coming from the field that I study. That's little typical cognitive bias.
I hope you guys are enjoying this show. In response to numerous inquiries on how to support the show, I've started a Patreon account to accept donations. These donations will help your superior self reach and serve more people and improve the quality and content of the show. I appreciate your donations, and you can find the link in the show notes, or you can visit yoursuperiorself.com and click the button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. Thank you guys for all your support. Now, back to the show. So and I probably will catch slack for this, because what does holistic mean? Like, I see it all the time, and the first thing I think of is just I don't know why. I feel like it's boo-hoo. Like, I don't know what is holistic.
This is awesome question, by the way, because there's a really fascinating answer behind this, which is, so most people don't realize that, and this is, you can fact check this. This is, it's out there, not made up by Steve. So in the late 1800s, Rockefeller. So prior to the 1800s, the predominant form of medicine in America was holistic, right? It was energy work. It was homeopathy. It was herbal medicine. It was touch healing, all this stuff. And so around that time, drugs were starting to be invented. And those drugs, it turns out, were petroleum-based, right? They were made from petroleum oil. Rockefeller saw this. He goes, oh, wait, so the more of these drugs that are sold, the more money I make. So he donated millions of dollars in 1800 money, which would be like billions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars in today money, to medical colleges, so he could staff the board of the medical colleges with his people. And they basically completely changed how medicine is taught into what it is today, which is you match a symptom to a drug. And he put together a whole PR campaign, snake oil salesman, thank you, Rockefeller, to basically discredit every herbal medicine, every non-prescription drug way of practicing. So how most people that are experiencing their way of medicine when they go to their doctor, they don't realize the root reason why that came to be was oil profits. Fascinating, right? And so now circle back to what I believe holistic is. So my pet peeve in the holistic world is people say, we're holistic. We'll treat your mind, we'll treat your body, and we'll treat your spirit. If you think about it, that's an oxymoron, right? They're like, we'll treat you whole, but I just divided you into 3 parts of you, right? And so to me, there's a very subtle but yet drastically important and big distinction between we treat your mind, we treat your body, we treat your spirit, versus we treat you, Trey, but we will see you from a mind perspective. We will see you from a body perspective. We will see you from a spirit perspective, right? Subtle, but huge. Ultimately, it is just you. For sure, how you think, your every thought, we have research now showing this, is affecting your genetics, right? And so everything is intertwined. And so to me, holistic means looking at a human from all different perspectives. What we do is we look at from energetic, vibrational. We look at it from your mind, like what are the stories that you have, right, that then dictates your perception and your reality. We'll look at your mechanical self, right? And there's studies showing, for example, this popular TED Talk, just by doing this and getting your chest up, your testosterone just increased 12%, right? So our mechanical self affects our chemical self, right? And so, of course, then the last one would be chemical. And we even look at environmental, right? Because we can optimize you out the wazoo, but I don't know, there's mold in your house, let's say, nothing's going to be healthy about you, right? So we look at everything involving a human. So
So basically, when we go to the doctor, we get this generic medication,
Hmm.
right? Not personal medication, not nothing that's specific towards us. So essentially, try to find something herbal, right? Like that's better than taking a generic brand type of medication.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Like, all right, let's just say because now I'm like because I'm really it's so weird because like if you asked me when I was 24, like would you prefer like if you said Trey, would you prefer me get you get your swell on, get bigger chests, muscles, or would you rather have me let's work on longevity or brain fog and mindset? I would definitely say muscles. Obviously girls, all that. But now, 35, it's like
Yeah.
everything's reversed. Like I really want to learn more about longevity. I really want to learn about how I can maximize my brain power. Like, and I feel like the more that I'm learning now, like it's just my my whole thought process is upside down from where it used to be. Like it's crazy. It seems like we're learning more about the brain than ever before. We're learning more about our stomach, right? The I'm starting to learn about the microbes and everything that's going on in there. Do you ever talk about that? Do you talk about microbes and diets and things of that
Yeah.
nature?
Yeah, it's a pretty big part of what we do. Essentially, I have a video where I explain essentially chronic systemic inflammation, right? Being swollen constantly, even just a little bit, but all of your cells being swollen constantly, essentially is the root cause of almost all non-infectious illnesses, right? So I always say, like, other than licking a doorknob or a toilet bowl and getting sick, other than that, the root cause of, cancer, heart disease, dementia, arthritis, high blood pressure, diabetes, you name it, is chronic systemic inflammation. And so since 2012, science has known this. There's not new information. And so then I looked at, well, what are the top root causes of chronic systemic inflammation? And for sure, gut, right? Gut health is one of the five, right? So there's five root causes: gut health, food selection, stress, sleep, and toxins. Those are the five.
Hmm.
And what's fascinating is if you can address all five, the analogy I say is you're in a boat, there are five holes and the water's coming in. And so when you're young, you have lots of energy, right? You can dump water fast enough where the boat never sinks. There's water constantly coming in, but you're just dumping it out fast enough. As you get older, right, 40 years of dumping water, you're like, I'm getting a little tired. Water starts to build up, and now the boat's sinking. And you're like, oh crap, as the boat's sinking, you're getting wet. It's more uncomfortable. You're even less motivated to dump the water out. And when that boat sinks, it means you're dead, right? And so the goal is to plug those five holes, right? And so medicine, just think, when you go to your doctor, they don't say, oh, by the way, you don't have diabetes or you don't have high blood pressure. What you have is you have the ability to heal from anything. Let's just find what's blocking the healing that's presenting with the symptoms of high blood pressure. That is not even being discussed, right? And so the entire frame is you're powerless unless you come to me and you take this, right? I believe that we are very empowered to heal. We just want to plug those holes and the water stops coming in and you're fine, right? It's a whole different framework.
So going along with that diet, which one do you prefer? Do you like? I know there's a big keto diet going on right now. I know there's been so many. There's been the South Beach,
Yeah.
Atkins. There's some intermittent fasting going on right now, which I've been trying to participate a little bit more in. I talked to JJ Hardy, and she not JJ Hardy, excuse me, JJ Virgin,
Uh-huh.
and she discussed intermittent fasting a little bit on the show. She said it was better to do it at night as opposed to morning because when you go, she said to eat a dinner earlier and then fast through the night as opposed to eating later and then not eating breakfast and fasting into the lunch into lunch. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on behind those two questions. So first, I'll preface it with, uh, fortunately and unfortunately, I've studied mindset long enough to realize that the thing is never the thing. I'll start with that. So hold that. Thing is never the thing. And so first I'll answer the easier question, which diet? Um, the only diet that applies to all humans right now is a chemical-free diet,
Mm.
right? And so other than just trying to not eat chemicals, which essentially means don't eat foods that are non-organic, that's been through a machine. Anything that has an ingredients list attached to it, right? If it's been through a machine, it for sure has been contaminated, right? And so other than eating a non-chemical diet, after that, we can't even now recommend any specific diet anymore. Here's why. I'll give you an example. So I had a friend, well-known entrepreneur, try keto, felt horrible. We genetically tested him, and it turns out that his liver genetically cannot process more than 22 grams of saturated fat a day. Obviously, on keto, you're eating way more than 22 grams of saturated fat. And so genetically, that diet would literally was killing him, right? Now, it'd be maybe fine for some people, but for him, it was not fine. So we have the science for personalized nutrition these days. We'll know exactly what foods that best fit you genetically, that best fit you based on the bacteria that you have in your gut, that best fit you based on your current metabolic, chemical, blood profile, basically, right? So once you have that science, it's kind of like ass backwards to be like, no, everyone, do keto or everyone do paleo, right? And so, but the only diet that for sure benefits everyone, because no one benefits from eating industrial chemicals, is a chemical-free diet, right? And so, without any customized data, I'll say, or individualized data, I would say the only diet I recommend is a non-aisle, like when you go shopping, don't go in the aisles. That's where all the packaged foods are. Just shop the perimeter only diet. And I will say that if you live in America, if someone's listening to this and live in America, I would also eat grain-free, right? Not because of gluten, it's because of Roundup, right?
Mm.
Monsanto. 99% of people that are gluten intolerant are really just Monsanto intolerant, right?
Mm.
Because when we test people for toxicity, we've yet to test someone without glyphosate in their body. Everyone has it, right? Because it's sprayed everywhere, right? And so if you live in America, I highly recommend not eating grains. It's pretty much in all grains. I would not drink wine from California. When tested, all has Roundup in it. Doesn't matter if it says organic. So, right, those are some general recommendations without any testing. So now I'll answer the intermittent fasting question. So you can achieve every benefit of intermittent fasting in other ways, right? So I'll preface it with that. Certain nutrients can basically give you the benefits of intermittent fasting. And so I would recommend deciding if you're going to intermittently fast, not based on anything nutrition or weight or health reasons. I would base it on what is the practice. This is where, the thing's not the thing, right? What is the practice that I'm practicing if I do intermittent fasting, right? Meaning, because intermittent fasting is a very structured eating plan. Like you can't eat between this time and this time, only between this time and this time. It's a practice of putting things in boxes, right? This is the box of eating time. This is the box of non-eating time. And so what you do is you ask yourself, in my life right now, how much practice am I doing boxing life? If you're over boxing, right? If you're hyper vigilant and labeling everything and worried about so many things, you're trying to control everything and your life is not going well as you're approaching this, you may want to practice not boxing, right? Which is flow, which would be, let me hold this bowl of lettuce or whatever you want to eat and be like, how do I feel right now? Right? Do I want to eat this? Is this food healthy for me? And being in tune to yourself without labeling, right? But if your life is disorganized because you haven't labeled, like you're just like constantly in flow, you're traveling, you're a digital nomad, you're sick, there's no structure in your life, maybe you intermittently fast because you probably could benefit from practice of boxing things. So I would look at it from a meta perspective versus a physiological perspective.
That's an awesome answer to a complicated question. So now I want to move on to the mind. I want to talk about boosting brain function, right? So I've been big on that, right? And I've been taking I've been kind of messing around with some of the Joe Rogan's what is it? Alpha Brain.
Yep.
And there's another one that is a supplement that has to do with what is it, lion's mane, the mushroom.
Sure.
Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, does the mushroom supplement pills actually work in creating more brain cells and helping you clear that brain fog?
It does. Yeah. So lion's mane has been shown to increase NGF, which is essentially is a chemical that allows a brain cell to sprout more connections to connect to another brain cell, which is amazing, right? Um, yeah, I'm a huge fan of nootropics, right? That's a general category of nutrients slash drugs that can enhance cognition for sure. I mean, I've been experimenting and playing with that since 1995, right? And so yeah, I kind of started hacking way before that word even existed. And so, however, um, if you're not sleeping well and you're eating tons of toxins and those things are rotting your brain, no amount of nootropics is really going to do that much, right? And so the nootropics enhance, but not many people are talking about how do we at least clear out the system so it's optimized. And there's a huge need for this. This is very interesting statistics. So since 1940, since World War II, like the 1940s, every 10 years, the average American IQ has decreased every decade between 2.3 to 4.5%. So I did the math. If you just average those two numbers out, multiply by how many decades it's been, roughly 8 decades, it's a 24% decrease. Right? So the average American is 24% less able to think versus 1940s. Yeah, and so mainly because of environmental toxins, right? And so, lots of reasons. One of them being environmental toxins. And so, if anyone is listening that's looking to enhance their brain, the first thing I would do is to eliminate the toxins, right? Like it is horrendous for our brain, right? And so thus, the whole don't eat food that's been through a machine, and also for your personal care products. Basically, if you have a personal care product that the brand where you've seen like an ad or a commercial, it's toxic. All the big brands are toxic, right? So you want to make sure that you're, buying non-toxic soap, shampoo, deodorant, whatever you're basically spraying and rubbing on your body. Between that and getting great sleep and then healing your gut, those three will basically eliminate brain fog without any nootropics.
Like, so brain fog is like the hot topic right now. I know
Yep.
a lot of my friends are talking about it. I'm hearing it all over
Yeah.
podcasts. Can you explain a little bit about what that is? And
Sure.
they say that we've been dealing with it our entire lives. Like when you look back on your life and you can't remember certain things in your life, that's brain fog. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, what are
Yeah.
your
So,
thoughts?
yep. Definitely more and more prevalent. And we're starting to see it in younger and younger people. Essentially, it's brain inflammation, right? So when your brain cells are inflamed, uh, like any cell that's inflamed, the machinery, which is like the DNA and how it works, doesn't work well, right? And so, yeah, and there's much, much more neuroinflammation that's happening. The incidence of neuroinflammatory diseases are skyrocketing, like huge. And it is a very so I always tell people like with stem cells coming, we're in the next 3, 5, definitely in 10 years, the ability to print your organs will be available, right? So recently last week they printed a little mini human heart, right? So all of your organs in the future can be repaired and replaced, right? Just like print it and put it in there, or regenerate it directly with stem cells while it's in your body, right? So all of your parts will start to last longer than anyone can imagine. However, your brain's got to last because your brain goes, they can't just print your new brain and put it in, right? And so, for sure, of all the organs, the brain is the most important for people to take care of. Yeah, and it goes back to the 5 holes. You got to make sure that you're addressing those 5 holes because they're the root cause of the brain inflammation, right? And so many people are still brainwashed into thinking, let's just take this pill, right? They think the solution is an add versus a subtract. A lot of times the solution can be a subtract instead of an add. We're basically just, I remind people, I made a post on Facebook about this, just because you're taking a herbal thing for your symptoms doesn't mean it's better than a drug because you're still just suppressing symptoms. You're not getting to the root cause, right? So a lot of people with brain fog, if they take a nootropic or a stimulant to minimize the brain fog and they feel better, that's no better than taking a drug, right? Because Sure, the natural thing may have less side effects, but what happens is you are allowing the root cause of the brain fog to still be there, and that's wrecking your body still, right? Yeah. So,
That's so clean up our diet.
yeah,
Get non-toxic
yeah,
shampoo,
sleep.
sleep, and take some, get some mushrooms.
Yeah, and definitely stress is a big. So reframe your reality, right? That
So what? So to get the right diet for us, like, what's one way we can do that? Like, is there a way we can get a personalized diet? Is there a app that we can use to see, like, how do we get the best diet for us?
Yeah, so there are a lot of companies, right, these days that are doing partially this, right? So, for example, you can get Viome testing, which I'm a huge fan of, and they will look at your food and best foods for you from a bacteria perspective. You can get, I like Nutrition Genome for genetic testing. Basically, they tell you which foods are best for you genetically. From an inflammation perspective, there's a bunch of labs, right? And so you can get any of the food sensitivity testing and kind of figure out which foods are sensitive or inflammatory for you. The one way, at least with that one, you could bypass testing. You can do what's called an elimination diet, right? So you basically eat like fruits, nuts, and vegetables for 30 days. And after that, you add in one new food a day every about 3 days. And you will for sure know which foods are reactionary to you. That's really the best way to figure out like what to eat. Yeah, and I mean we're actually talking to some companies right now that will be able to offer in the future. Like right now, Terrace Kitchen, it's a food prep company. They meal prep for people. They just recently purchased a DNA company, and so now they can test your DNA and then basically make meals customized to your DNA, right? It's pretty awesome. And so it's one step closer to truly customized, still missing some other data points that's most ideal, right? Because it's just looking at you from a DNA perspective, it's just one way of looking at you. That's bypassing bacteria, it's bypassing inflammatory chemicals. And so we're not quite there. No, I mean, we're the only company really right now that's looking at all that data and aggregating it. There's no mass company right now offering that service, but something is better than nothing, right? Don't just jump in and start eating stuff randomly.
So I want to get back to you a little bit here, Dr.
Yep.
Young. What is your why?
Yeah, great question. So I did this exercise with Bill Donius. So it's called like a Thought Revolution. He was the author of Thought Revolution. I don't know if you ever met him. So he would be actually a really interesting guy to have on this podcast. So you basically ask a question and you write the answer with your dominant hand, and you ask the same question and write it with your non-dominant hand, and you get different answers.
Really?
Yeah. So your dominant hand is like your left brain, analytical, ego-driven. The non-dominant hand's like the creative right brain, more, we'll say, soul-driven. And so I've asked this question. And so my dominant hand, my right hand will say things like, my big why is to help more than 1 billion people heal, be healthy, achieve all this awesome stuff. My non-dominant hand says, just be love.
That's insane. So, I mean, and that happens every time.
Consistently consistently different questions, you get this very, different, sometimes a little overlap, but it's almost like my right brain, the spiritual self, is like keeps it short and simple and sweet. It's like just be love, and you embody that as you're around people, and that is enough. And it's the ego, right hand, left brain, that's all like you got to achieve. You're designed to achieve this and this and this. Yeah, it's quite fascinating.
That is crazy. So continuing on that theme, like you talked about helping people, helping 1 billion people, like how are you going to help them?
Yep. So, the big tool is the AI. Yeah. So, we have a lot of stuff going on where, as we're healing right now, entrepreneurs with all this testing, like we're testing like thousands of data points about them, and our goal is basically take that data, plug it into an AI, feed it with even more research, more case studies from other people, and then the AI will start to figure out how to get the imbalances restored, because we're doing it manually, which is obviously a more expensive process. So in the future, the end goal, what we think the AI will be able to do is bypass all the expensive testing, right? It will basically say, I'll make up something. It will like scan through your Facebook profile and be like, oh, based on millions of data points, we realize if someone, takes a picture of food and posts it on Facebook more than X times, it means they have diabetes. I'm just making this data,
Sure.
right? It will basically be able to figure out what's our behavior data that has been so correlated with medical, physiological, expensive blood testing data that it bypasses the expensive testing and it will jump right to, oh, you have this imbalance, based on this behavior that we see, and then this is how you restore that imbalance, right? And so that is the big thing. I mean, we also invented something that as you're working on a computer, you cannot slouch, and you actually become more healthy while you work on a computer, right? There's a huge, no one worldwide has figured this out yet, but the data is massive. Like 2.5 years ago, research came in that shows every hour of continuous sitting takes 7 minutes of your life away.
Really?
Yeah, out of New Zealand, based on 26,000 people. So it's
Holy
pretty large.
every hour.
Yep. And so the headline you might have seen was "Sitting is the new smoking," right? Because there's data showing like every cigarette takes 15 minutes of your life. And so I did the math for an average 40-hour work week. After 20 years of work, you've lost 1 year of your life, right? And so it is a huge problem. The inactivity problem is huge. And so we actually invented something that allows for movement whenever you want while you're working, and you cannot slouch. Because the other problem is when you sit on the computer, you slouch.
Well, there's something like some kind of strap you can put on your back. I've just seen it recently on, I don't know if it was on Facebook, but you can, like, it sits you straight, like your shoulders are back. You're kind of like sitting better. You're not slouching.
Yeah, at least that solves the posture problem. But I will say, I used to recommend, I mean, those things aren't new. They've been around forever. 20 plus years ago, I used to recommend those things. No one ever sticks with it. Because as you're moving, because those straps go across the front of your shoulders, they change. Like over time, it's just so uncomfortable. No one ever. It looks awesome on video for sure. Like, oh my god! But try being in that for like 8 hours a day. Not doable.
Sure, sure. So I mean, what, like, I guess every hour, take a break or something, get up, move around.
Well, yeah. So that's the current recommendation, which is actually every 30 minutes. It's almost like to me, it's silly to think about. It's like the workstation is so unhealthy. Like get away from it every 30 minutes, right? And then come back to it. No one has figured out, why don't we just design a workstation that's actually healthy? And that's what we did. And we went with a blank slate. I went with I'm an alien. I've never seen Earthlings. I've never been to Earth. I've never seen a workstation, but I intercepted a file about Earthlings, about their anatomy and biomechanics. What would I design for them, right? So I didn't want to be anchored towards a chair, a desk, what has already been existed, because that's not innovation. So we went with a blank slate and designed something that currently doesn't exist, but it's infinitely better than anything that's in existence.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So well, officially we've been working on it for 2 years, multiple prototypes. It'll probably be ready in maybe 4 to 6 months. It's going to be a game changer in terms of changing how people work on their computer. It allows for movement, and you can't slouch, basically.
So what is it? Just like I mean, you talk about it's not like your typical desk or chair, right? Like, what's the setup?
It's something that pairs with a standing desk, right? So a lot of people think a standing desk is the solution. It's not. When you stand still, you're still, right? It's the lack of movement that's really killing us. And also, when you stand versus sitting, standing causes varicose veins. All the blood pulls into your legs. It has its own problems. You don't get varicose veins from sitting. And then when you stand, so at least when you're sitting and your elbows go on the chair, your neck and shoulders can relax, right? When you're standing, there's no armrest, right? And so now all that stress you're trying to take off of maybe your back basically just goes to your neck and your shoulder. So it's a different evil than sitting, but still evil. And so again, recognizing all of those, we design things to overcome every one of those obstacles, basically.
That is awesome. I can't wait for that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
How can people connect with you, Dr. Young?
Yeah. I mean, find me on Facebook. I mean, currently right now, I have a few businesses. And they can go on my brick and mortar business and find me there. It's just, bodysolutionsinc.com. We're actually, so as much as we're doing amazing things with entrepreneurs, it's in such high demand. People are knocking on our doors and asking for us to help them. We literally we don't even have a website, right, for the brand called Immortal, right? And so the brand where we are working with entrepreneurs through telemedicine and healing them, we literally don't even have a website yet. It's just like we're so busy servicing, we haven't had a need even to build out any kind of web presence. And so right now, if someone wanted to connect with me, just either on Facebook, right, find me on Facebook, or just go through my current brick and mortar business, which is just bodysolutionsinc.com.
Awesome. So at the very end of my podcast, I kind of have my guests kind of give like a little pep talk to the audience. Imagine that you're speaking directly to someone that is listening currently, and so here's the scenario. So let's say I'm a 9-to-5er. My diet is it could be better. I'm very stressed, but I want to get back into taking care of me. Like, what are the baby steps that I can take to get back into shape and be better mentally, physically, and spiritually?
Sure. Yeah. So our stories govern everything. So step one, and I do have in fact, I do have a journal that actually documents this process. If any of your listeners, I can give you a link. Maybe I'll give you the PDF. They can just print it up. And so what you do is you identify, all right, what are my goals? Like, what specifically do you want to improve? And let's say we'll keep it generic. I want to be healthy, live longer, right? And so the next step is you identify, well, what's an existing story that is blocking that? Maybe someone's like, I'm too busy, I work too much, I don't have the time, whatever that story may be. Third step would be, how do you rewrite that story that currently is an obstacle into an opportunity, right? And so you kind of sit down and be like, let's say if it's too busy, like, well, that means if I'm too busy, I'm actually an action taker. At least I'm not lazy. I'm actually just doing stuff. And I may be doing other stuff instead of taking care of my health. And maybe I'll just take that action and find a big why that motivates myself to take action. At least I'm a good action taker, right? So you start to rewrite the story to turn the obstacle into an opportunity. And then you basically read that story every day. And as you do that, you're literally just reprogramming your brain that takes an obstacle and turns it into an opportunity. The thing that's blocking you from, having the thing that you want the most, you're flipping that around and turning it into an asset. Everything downstream will fall into place. No one that's listening here doesn't know that eating chemicals and not sleeping well and stressing is not helpful. Everyone knows that. It's just there's an obstacle that's blocking you from achieving it. And this one process that's the simplest will sort of flip that around. And I believe in the infinite intelligence of humans, right? The downstream stuff you'll figure out.
I want to say thank you to Dr. Steve Young for hanging out with us today and taking the time to talk about health and helping us achieve that next level of awareness when it comes to living a holistic lifestyle. So thank you, Dr. Young, for hanging out. I want to say thank you to you, the listener, listening to this right now. Thank you for the downloads. Thank you for the support. Without you guys, I would have nothing. And you guys are the best fans out there. If you want to connect on social media, you can check me out on Instagram at tdowns80. You can follow me on Twitter at DownsTrey, and follow me or like me on Facebook at Trey Downs, DOWNES. I have a fan page over there that you can kind of check out and see what's going on behind the scenes. I hope this episode finds you well. I hope you guys have a great week. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Always remember, get better.
Better get your quarters out. Gotta play to win, try not to sin. Better hope you make it out.